Hi guys, sometimes I feel my mission on this channel is to call out charlatans like Nigel Farage, because the media outlets that generally host him certainly will not. So his pet project of blaming everything that's going wrong in Britain on immigration, like he previously did with the European Union, is in full swing. Name a problem and kicking people out is the solution. Farage will use dog whistles and weasel words to convince his audience that he's correct, but we need to call it out.
It's about fairness. It's simply about fairness. All those arguments that you just made, people are incensed that young males who, by the way, throw their iPhones and their passports into the channel.
Okay, so let's say for the sake of argument they do that. Now, why would somebody throw their phone away before they're picked up? It's interesting he mentions iPhones here, but let's say somebody throws their phone away. Why would they do that? Isn't it likely that they have been communicating with the people smugglers all the way to that point? And the people smugglers have told them, before you're picked up by Border Force or whoever, throw your phone away. Because if you don't, we're of course in connection with your family at home. Because the people smuggling begins normally in the home country. It's not something that has sprung up in France. So if these people don't follow the rules, there are possible consequences for their family. So they're probably instructed, throw the phone away before you're picked up, because we don't want our contact details falling into the hands of the Border Force, for example.
And I filmed this myself, being out there on a small boat. They chuck them into the sea at the 12-mile line. Do you know they're given a new iPhone as soon as they get to Dover?
Oh. No, they do not. They do not get a new iPhone as soon as they get to Dover. This is a lie. Now, why is Nigel Farage engaging in this misleading information? I thought he was trying to keep his nose clean following the riots. So, does Border Force give people iPhones or new phones? No, they don't. Does the Home Office give people iPhones and new phones? Generally, no. There may be some exceptions, but generally, no. It's charities that give people phones. Maybe they're old iPhones. I don't think they're going out and buying new iPhones for the asylum seekers. Why do they give them phones? Because they need to be in contact with the lawyers. They need to attend meetings with the Home Office. They have to attend appointments with the Home Office. So they have to follow the rules. And in many cases, a lot of this information is online. So they need a smartphone to access the internet. That's why charities are giving them phones. And in some cases, the Home Office will give them phones. But it's not everyone gets an iPhone as soon as they arrive.
No, I'm not making this up, I promise you.
Yes, because Nigel Farage would never lie. He would never make up such things. He has no evidence to back up this claim. It's just his word. Should we take Nigel Farage's word for this?
Everything's free. They get, 40 quid a week fag money. The whole thing's unbelievable. So it's about fairness. Remember this. The last Labour government did deport tens of thousands of illegal immigrants.
Yep, they did.
David Blunkett as...
Now, what he's talking about here is people who have failed in their claim. What he's talking about here is people who have overstayed their visa or not respected their visa. Those people were deported. But Nigel Farage is trying to spin this as, well, we're talking about asylum seekers and immigrants at the same time. And what he's talking about is deporting asylum seekers, stopping people from actually being able to claim asylum, or as soon as people try to make an asylum claim, deport them. So there's a big difference here. And unfortunately, these two definitions keep getting mixed up. People who have overstayed their visa or not respected the conditions of the visa, those people rightly should be deported because they have not respected the law. And people who have put in an asylum claim.
Home Secretary was a damn sight tougher than any of the Conservatives were in that 14 years of failure. But, and here's the big difference, the European Court in those days was not as activist as it is today. I do not believe we'll ever sort this. All the while, we're part of the court, we're part of the convention that is signed into British law with the Human Rights Act that Blair brought in 19...
And once again, the nodding dog doesn't ask one question about, well, what impact would this have on the Good Friday Agreement? You keep banging on about, well, we need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights in order to bring down immigration, in order to deport people. Look, we're not going to be able to deport people because we're part of the European Convention on Human Rights. It's absolute tripe. He knows it's tripe, but unfortunately, many people watching this don't. And they think, oh, well, if we leave the European Convention, then we can deport all these people, deport all these asylum seekers, people arriving, by dinghy. We can just pick them up and then take them back to where? Lee Anderson would say France. Richard Tice would say Calais. You can't. Even if the UK left the convention, you don't leave the convention, but even if they did leave the convention, you can't just take people back to France. You need to have an agreement. But it would be breaching the UN conventions.
1998, and what will happen, even if we were to defy the court, the legislation in place means that British judges would always lean on the European Convention.
What was the point in leaving the EU and all that involved if we don't leave the ECHR? What is
Jeremy Kyle doesn't seem to understand the difference between the European Union and the European Court of Human Rights. There is a British judge sitting on the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. It's not a foreign court, it's an international court. If it was in London, it would still be an international court. What was the point of Brexit if we didn't leave the European Convention? Because there wasn't a referendum to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, people like Nigel Farage would love to have a referendum on that. But there's no mention, once again, of the Good Friday Agreement. And what would replace it? This is not about kicking migrants out. This is not about pushing back the boats. This is about stripping British people of protections that they have. Because if the British government run roughshod over people's human rights, if Nigel Farage is Prime Minister someday and he's stripping people away stripping the rights away from people, where do they go if the UK is no longer a member of the European Convention on Human Rights? If it's not signed up to that, where do they go? Well, they can go nowhere.
That's like halfway hotel, isn't it? It's pointless. Sharon in Wigan, for you, Nigel. Talk. Please ask Nigel how we get rid of the loonies out before they ruin our UK. I'm having sleepless nights worrying about bills, and all I see is illegal young men coming from dangerous countries being treated better than I am.
What is an illegal young man? I've never heard of an illegal young man before. Once again, mixing up asylum seekers and people who have overstayed their visa. But these people don't... The problem here is that these people don't understand the difference, and the media is not informing them on the difference.
Here you are.
Sharon, the bad news is it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. I think there is a big sales pitch now from the criminal gangs, which is, look, Rwanda's gone. There is almost no chance of you being deported once you get to that processing centre in Dover.
Why? Why would somebody not be deported? See, once again, you're talking about asylum seekers. The asylum seeker will arrive, they will be processed, and if their claim is invalid, they will be deported, like has always been the case. But the problem was the Conservatives were not processing claims. So people were sitting in hotels. There was not even hotel. Even I'm falling into this trap. They're not hotels. They were sitting in accommodation. Once again, these are no longer hotels if they don't have all the services of a hotel. So people were sitting in accommodation waiting for their claim to be processed. There was a guy who was waiting 13 years, or maybe it was 15 years. The Labour Party were still in power when he began the process of his asylum claim. This is insane. If you process the claims and you deem these people have no right to stay, then they go, or they make an appeal. If they've exhausted the system, then they are eventually deported. Now, of course, you need to have an agreement with different countries. If you don't have an agreement, then you're not going to be able to deport people there. That's the reality of the situation. There's no way around that. You can't send people to Afghanistan if you don't have an agreement with the Taliban. And nobody really wants to have an agreement with the Taliban.
So the problem, I think, will get worse. I don't believe it'll get better. I don't think Starmer has even anything approaching a plan to deal with it, but kind of hopes it'll just sort of go away. Well, it won't go away, and that perception of unfairness won't either.
See, he started off with this idea of unfairness, so that there are people coming into the country by legitimate means, and those people should be protected, while there are people coming in by illegitimate means, and they should be kicked out. But if you create safe routes, then people don't need to throw away their phones. For example, Ukrainian refugees didn't have to throw away their phones before they got to Britain. Why was that? Because they didn't have to rely on people smugglers. If you create safe routes, then people will not have to pay these people smugglers thousands of euros to get through Europe and then thousands of pounds to get to Britain. See, Farage is not interested in proper solutions. He's interested in sniping from the sidelines. And he's going to continue this over the next number of years. But we need to call it out. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.